For our like crazy heat that we're gonna have. I was looking at our, I like to check the weather. I don't know why I check it here because it's like always the same, but I check the weather like compulsively. And I think the next 10 days or 9 days, there's not a day under 100. I mean, I live in Simi, so it might be a little different here, but like it was literally like 104, 105, 107, 106. Like I want to move for a week. I heard you saying it's September, it's supposed to be cold. I had the same thought. And I know it's not necessarily right here, but I am not in the mood for 107 weather, right? I can't do anything about it, but I'm not in the mood. I know. No, it's tomorrow's September, right? I feel like all these stores should have their Halloween stuff pretty soon. I don't know. I keep waiting for Target to have their Halloween stuff. Then it's time, like the pumpkin spice lattes are back. But I'm waiting for all the stores to be where I'm at, which is ready for Halloween. We'll see. So, I'm passing around the attendance sheet again, as I did last time. Make sure you sign in. If you didn't sign it last time and it's highlighted, you can always sign over it. And that's totally fine. It's not worth points, but it does help me keep track of who is here. And then we're going to chapter 4 today. So hopefully you saw that we are skipping chapter 3 for now. So what we'll do for the next week or so is we'll look at chapter 4, which relates to gender. And then we'll talk about female sexual anatomy and then male sexual anatomy. And that will be our first unit done. So I also wrote up here, and I'm sure you don't need a reminder of this, but there's no school on Monday. So we have a nice long weekend, a chance to relax and sweat. I don't know, it's gonna be so hot. I'll stop complaining about it. I'm just not in the mood for it. But we have no school on Monday, so we get a little bit of a break, and then I'll see you back on Wednesday. So yeah, we'll spend today kind of talking about the differences between sex and gender. What are some of the things that form somebody's gender identity, the influences on it, some gender stereotypes, and then we'll get to eventually the varieties of gender and a couple of different ways that can present, or a lot of different ways that can present. But I want to start with these two terms, and these terms are used incorrectly all the time. And I have to tell you, just even in like a quick search, I was looking for a video for something else, and I typed in like lessons related to gender, and they were all talking about gender lessons, but they were talking about sex, not gender. These are like really commonly confused. And so I want to make sure that you know the difference between them. And once you understand the difference, you can kind of argue that they're very interchangeable, but they are a little bit different. Sex is one thing, gender is another. Oftentimes they're the same for people, but they don't have to be. So sex is a person's biology, right? Somebody's physiology, their biology. It's what sex organs they have externally and internally, their sex characteristics. So when we talk about sex, we're typically talking about anatomy, right? So what is your internal and external like sexual anatomy? We're talking about the role of hormones. What is your chromosomal makeup? Are you XX or XY or other? We'll talk about that a little bit more later. Typically, we use words here like male, female, or intersex. So someone identifying as male, female, or intersex would be a kind of a blending of the two. Maybe somebody who has some combination of male and female anatomy, which is fairly rare, but it does definitely happen. So anatomy, physiology, biological stuff, traditionally male and female, but we could add intersex in there as well, which we'll talk a little bit about. Because there are a bunch of different conditions where sometimes people have kind of atypical sex presentation. Gender, on the other hand, is something that's a little more like constructed. It's a little more fluid and flexible. It doesn't tend to be so static. Like your sex is something that you're traditionally born into. You can change it and to some degree through surgery and so on. But gender is something that you tend to choose a little bit more, or at least have the ability to shape a little bit more readily. So this we tend to look at like psychological, a little bit cultural. It's something that is a little bit more of like a construct. So we could say that it's constructed. And when we're talking about gender, now there's an incredible number of gender presentations, which we'll talk a little bit about, but traditionally we're using words like feminine, masculine, we could say androgynous, cisgender, binary, genderqueer, there's a million terms, right? And we'll talk about those a little bit later in the chapter. But these are kind of the most traditional ones, someone who identifies as being kind of feminine, which traditionally goes with a sex of being female. Someone who identifies as more masculine, which again, like stereotypically, traditionally goes with being male. And androgynous is kind of a blending of the two. And then a bunch of other terms that we'll get to. So oftentimes, like 90% of the time, someone who is male identifies as masculine. Right. And so when you were asking the questions, right, some of you asked, like, are you male or female, or like, what is your gender identity? Like, oftentimes this is so obvious to people who identify that same way, that are very congruent. So someone who is female and identifies as feminine, that's kind of the more typical presentation. But we're getting more and more of like a blending, more and more terms and identities that have emerged. Somebody's gender identity is how they perceive themselves or identify as being like masculine, feminine, or other, right? And again, one of those other terms that we'll talk about later. And there's a bunch of different, like we can call them gender roles, a collection of attitudes and behaviors that are considered like normal and appropriate for people of a particular gender. And when you break these gender roles or these gender norms, sometimes it can have consequences, whether that's social consequences or people perceiving you to be of a different orientation or whatnot. There's a lot of consequences for breaking these, and gender is something that is very prescribed. Where was I yesterday? I was at soccer practice yesterday for the first time, which was exhausting. Yeah, right. I am officially a soccer coach now, 2 teams. I have to say the 8-year-olds were so much fun. Like, they decided that my nickname was Chicken Wing. I have no idea why, but I became Chicken Wing. And they're like, attack the chicken wing, put sauce on the wing. I'm like, what are we doing? I don't know what that means. They were so cute, the 11-year-olds. Not so much. That was way harder. I expected it to be the other way around. But I'm gonna have to figure out how to interact with 11-year-old girls a little better before Monday. But that's another story. But we were at practice, and I heard this husband and wife, like the wife screamed, right? And so we all looked over because it was loud, right? And she looked at her husband and she's like, kill it. And I was like, oh my God, it's a spider, right? I hate spiders. And she was like, kill it. And he's like, no, you kill it. And so everyone's staring at them, and she yells at him. The next thing she says, you're the man, you take care of it, right? And he's all like, I don't like spiders. You get there fighting about it. It was wildly entertaining. But that's like a gender role injunction, right? You're the man, you do X. You're a woman, you do X. This is what's expected of you because you are masculine or feminine or so on. Lots and lots of those little injunctions and gender role expectations, which we'll talk about throughout this chapter. And kind of a neat idea that was proposed a few years ago. I don't know if any of you have heard of the genderbread person, yes. Right? Not the gingerbread man, but the genderbread person. Totally different take. And it explains it up here. It says that gender is one of those things that everyone thinks they understand, but most people don't. Like Inception, I like that. Gender isn't binary. It's not either or. In many cases, it's a both and. A bit of this, a dash of that. This tasty little guide is meant to be an appetizer for understanding. It's okay if you're hungry for more. I love that it references food. Sold. Right? But what I love about this is it adds these different dimensions. We tend to think of gender as being something that's just like the things that you're into or one attribute. It actually involves a combination of a lot of different things. And that's what we're going to talk about a lot today. That your gender identity involves how you express your gender. It is shaped by your biological sex, which is why it starts to get confusing. Your sex and your hormones and all of these elements here do shape your gender identity, and they interact with each other. And sometimes we talk about how your gender also influences your orientation, which can be a little bit confusing as well. But there's a lot of different elements to your gender. And there's a cool little video that went with this. It was on the news not that long ago. It's like 3 or 4 years ago. So I'll play it for you. It's just a little introduction to gender. But what I love about it is they make a statement that I think is kind of helpful to remember, that gender is who you go to bed as. versus orientation is who you go to bed with. Now that's kind of overly simplistic. It's more than just who you have sex with or go to bed with. But I like that, right? Because they're often confused too. Gender identity and orientation oftentimes get clumped together, right? The second somebody doesn't fit the traditional gender, we assume that they're like gay or lesbian or bisexual. Sometimes that's true, and sometimes it's not. So gender is who you go to bed as, and orientation is who you go to bed with, right? And that's a little takeaway from the video. So let me pull this up here for you. So talking about this genderbread person, it's so easy to say man, right? Because we think of gingerbread man. But again, looking at these multiple layers that we have, and they all build upon each other, right? So your biological sex, whether you have whatever anatomy you have, does shape this. But it's not just that simple. And this is something that, again, we tend to think of as being really like consistent. But gender is something that's really fluid. It might change for people throughout their lifetime, right? And it can change. We tend to be a culture that wants people to fit neatly into boxes. And we don't like it when people don't fit neatly into boxes. But it tends to be something that's very fluid. You might identify as being more feminine at some points in your life, or more masculine, or more androgynous, and it might change. And that is totally fine and normal, even though we don't tend to view it that way. But again, our identity tends to be how we perceive ourselves, right? Do you view yourself as masculine, feminine, or other? And I think our culture has actually come a really long way on this, especially over the last 2 years with all the Zooms that we've had to do. I'm sure a lot of you have noticed that it's very common now for people with their Zoom names to put their preferred pronouns up there, right? It's definitely something that we all have been encouraged to do. And I love to confuse my poor colleagues. I'll put he, she, and everyone's all like, oh, what do we do with that? Like, or she, he, or whatever. I'll just put them all, right? Like I put every pronoun possible, like go for it, I don't care. And then they'll be like, I don't know what to call you. That's perfect. But gender identity is something that is fluid that way. I will share with you just on a personal note that our family is very confusing in a sense, right? So we have like myself and then my partner is female. Like we've been together. Gosh, we just had our 19-year anniversary. So she's put up with me for a long time, right? 19 years. But in our house, I'm dad. Okay? And it's just because I fit that role. Like I've never been like the mom figure. And my partner is and wanted that role. So she's mom and I'm dad. And oh, does that confuse people? Like my kids are fine with it. It's normal to them. But it confuses other people at practice yesterday, not to keep bringing up the soccer practice. But my kids kept saying, Dad, Dad. And the girls would look like, who the hell are they talking to? And I'm like, yep, that's me. Like, let's just get it out now. And I'm husband, but I go by she, right? And so it's super confusing. And I love that, right? It pushes everybody's boundaries and it makes a lot of people uncomfortable. But you can choose your gender identity. It can be whatever you want it to be. And so in our house, yeah, that's my role. And I have a lot of colleagues here who break the rules as well. Like, and I think that's great. It's something that's very fluid and can change, and you can have it be whatever you want. As I said, there's kind of a prescription for gender, and I found this cool commercial. It was a Dove commercial for soap, right? But it's like this "How to Be a Man" commercial. And if anyone ever sees like a equivalent of this, please by all means share it with me. But I think this is a good way to start talking about the things that shape gender and what these kind of gender prescriptions look like. And these are all stereotypes of masculinity, right? But all these different things that are expected traditionally of men, things that you're supposed to do or ways that you're supposed to behave, a lot of those injunctions and stereotypes in this unit. And we'll talk more about those in a couple of slides. But I think it starts to get at this idea of like what is typical and normal. And now we'll talk a little bit about what forms that identity. What are some of the factors that influence somebody's gender identity? And there are a few of them. Some of them are biological, very much connected to sex. And some of them are a little bit more like environmental and related to attitudes and other people, which we'll talk about next. But how we come to think of ourselves as like male or female or masculine or feminine or other really depends on this interaction between biological stuff and more like social stuff, right? The two of them combining, which is almost always the case in psychology, a little bit of nature and nurture. And so these biological processes play a big role. From the moment of conception, many biological factors start to combine together to decide whether we're going to be biologically male or female or intersexed or other. So conception, which we'll talk about later in the semester, conception is the moment where sperm and egg meet, right? Not pregnant yet, right? That has to implant in the uterine wall, but it's that moment where sperm cell fertilizes an egg cell and a new cell becomes formed. A little zygote or an embryo later on becomes formed. And from that moment, your chromosomal sex has already been determined. So your chromosomes make up like your genetic makeup. Now, as people, we have quite a few chromosomes, right? We have 22 pairs of what are called autosomes, and then 1 pair of sex chromosomes. And traditionally, right, somebody who is male has a chromosomal makeup of XY, and somebody who's female has a chromosomal makeup of XX. So from this moment of conception, your chromosomal sex makeup has already been determined. Right? And there's a lot of processes that are going to happen from there, but it's already been set. And so what you see oftentimes is, interestingly, when a newborn baby is being developed, right, inside the uterus or in the womb, you can't tell their sex for a period of time. For about 12 to 13 weeks or so on average, the anatomy of that unborn, like male or female baby, is the exact same. The structures that form the anatomy start out the same, and then they differentiate depending on your chromosomal makeup. It's not until usually like a little bit later, right, that you can see on an ultrasound whether that is a baby boy or a baby girl or maybe other. So the chromosomes start everything off, and then what happens is, again, your body starts to specialize. So if you have a chromosomal makeup of XX and you are traditionally like female, then what happens is your gonads start to develop in a traditional female presentation. So males and females have different sex glands. For women, it's traditionally we would call ovaries, and for men, it would be the testes. And then those gonads, which are glands that are part of the endocrine system, release hormones, which are going to cause you to further differentiate. And this whole cycle is just kind of dependent on each other. So chromosomes lead to the development of gonads, which lead to hormones being released, causing somebody's biological sex to unfold. And I found like the tiniest little video that talks about like how this sex chromosomal differentiation occurs. So I'll share it with you. But yeah.
Is gonads the scientific?
It is, right. Right. Yeah, it sounds like a made-up word in a way, right? But yeah, so the gonads are the reproductive glands, and it is the scientific technical term. And for women, it's the ovaries. For men, it's the testes. So short little video, it talks about how this chromosomal differentiation occurs. I'll play this for you. Right, continuing that sex development, and your sex identity also influences your gender. So this piece kind of starts it all off, and there are a lot of different hormones, and I want to take a few minutes to talk about some of them. And they each have their own job. They'll come up a lot over the course of the semester, but I want to introduce them. It's kind of a daunting looking slide because there's quite a few of them, but let's take a few minutes and talk about each one. I'll write a few kind of key terms for each one on the board. But these are the major sex hormones, right? And again, you'll see a lot of these throughout the semester. They'll come up over and over and over again. But the androgens, as it says up here, the androgens are traditionally the male sex hormones. This is testosterone, would be the biggest of the androgens. Now, I want to mention really quickly that women have male sex hormones and men have female sex hormones. It's just in different concentrations. So traditionally, men have more androgens and less estrogens, and women have more estrogens and less androgens. But we do both possess a little bit of each. So the androgens are testosterone, another one that I want to ask you, and androsterone. There's a couple of them, but these play a big role in male sexual development. Development of male sexual anatomy. They play a big role in like sperm production, which we'll talk about in the male reproductive unit in like a week or so. They also have a very big role in sexual desire. So the androgens are thought to play a big role in how interested people are in sex. which is one theory as to why men tend to traditionally have a higher sex drive than women, because they possess more testosterone. Not always the case, right? But that is one kind of proposed idea. The estrogens are the female sex hormones. And again, men have them as well, but just in less of a quantity. These tend to play a big role in the development of female sex organs. They play a huge role in the menstrual cycle, which we'll talk about in the next chapter. All the secondary sex characteristics. So we can write on here, female sex organs and development. The menstrual cycle. They play a big role in those things. And you'll see that these estrogens trigger a lot of different things to happen. They play a role in a lot of parts of pregnancy as well, which we'll talk about later in the semester. So we have male sex hormones, female sex hormones, but again, we both possess both. Progesterone, another big one. Are you glad right now that I give you a PowerPoint instead of writing everything on the board? I have such it's not the worst handwriting. My dad had the worst handwriting. I could never read anything he wrote. It could be worse. But progesterone is something that's secreted by the ovaries, and it plays a big role in preparing the lining of the uterus in women for implantation of a fertilized egg. So the progesterone that we release as women plays a big role in preparing that lining to receive an egg and maintain pregnancy. It also has a role in milk production. It maintains the placenta, which plays a big role in like nurturing and feeding a baby when it's in the uterus. So we could say it has a large part in the lining of the uterus. Right, building up that lining, it plays a huge role in pregnancy. Along with some kind of smaller roles in milk production and the placenta and so on. The next one, GnRH, I'm just going to abbreviate it up over short. Gonadotropin releasing hormone, or GnRH, is produced in the hypothalamus, right, which is a structure in our brain. And it's kind of like a master hormone, if you will. It's something that triggers the release of other hormones. We sometimes call this a gonad stimulating hormone. By being activated in the hypothalamus, it stimulates the gonads, the ovaries and the testes, to release other hormones, right? So it plays a big role in stimulating the pituitary gland. And if you think of the pituitary gland, it's like the master gland, right? It plays a huge role in things like puberty, right? And so what we see is that this gonadotropin releasing hormone stimulates the pituitary gland to then stimulate the gonads to release hormones. So it's almost like a master, right? In a way, it plays like a very like governing role rather than having like little individual tasks that it's in charge of. Couple more, FSH, follicle stimulating hormone, right here now. This one's released by the pituitary gland to stimulate the development of eggs in women, right? So eggs we sometimes call follicules. So it's in charge of follicular development. And then in the testes, it helps to produce testosterone. So both men and women possess FSH, but this is something that has a big role in the development of eggs in women. And then also playing a role in the formation of sperm. Isn't that? Luteinizing hormone, just a few more here. So this one we'll call LH, or one more down here. I think I still have room. LH, or luteinizing hormone, is something that's released by the pituitary gland, right? And this one stimulates ovulation. So if you've ever heard of somebody tracking their ovulation, right? Maybe they're trying to get pregnant or trying to avoid getting pregnant. You can use it in either way. When you're trying to get pregnant, you want to try and time it with your ovulation. Now, if somebody's tracking that, what they're looking for is a surge in LH. Luteinizing hormone surges, there's a massive spike in it just before that egg is released from the ovary and travels down the fallopian tube. So if somebody is trying to get pregnant, right, and they have this surge of LH, then they know that, okay, this is the time for us to have intercourse or introduce sperm into the body in some way, right, if we want to maximize our chance of getting pregnant, or avoid those things to maximize your chance of not getting pregnant. You can go either way, depending on your goal, right? So luteinizing hormone plays a role in ovulation. So when this hormone spikes, it causes an egg to be released from the ovary, travel down the fallopian tube, and go from there. Two more. I'll write them over here. All the races. I put a happy and sad things. Mainly happy, but a little sad things. I mean, when you're sleeping in on Monday, you probably won't be too sad already. But all right. Next one I have up here, prolactin. So prolactin, as it says up here, stimulates milk production after childbirth and the production of progesterone, which plays a role in maintaining pregnancy. So for this one, I'll write up here, mainly milk production. So after a woman gives birth to a newborn baby, they have the option to breastfeed. The vast majority of the time, most of the time, the body does produce milk. Part of that is the stimulation of like manual stimulation of that baby sucking on the breast or a nipple, but it also comes somewhat hormonally. So prolactin is a hormone that's released pretty heavily after childbirth, causing a woman to produce that milk so that they can breastfeed if they choose to. The last one that's up here, oxytocin. This will come up a lot. It's a very big hormone. Sometimes we call this the cuddle hormone. It plays a big role in orgasm and bonding. Not bonding, but bonding. You're going to say, what's bonding? That thing? Long chapter. But plays a big role in those things, right? When we are physically close to another person, when we're holding their hand or physically touching them or engaging in sexual activity, oxytocin is being released. And so we sometimes call it the cuddle hormone because when you are cuddling or physically close to someone, it's released in high quantities. It's also released quite a bit during labor to help women bond with their newborn baby, right? When a baby is born, a woman is encouraged to put them on their bare chest, right? And have that skin-to-skin contact. Not only does it regulate the baby's temperature and so on, but it's important for bonding. It causes the release of oxytocin, which plays a big role in connecting those two people together to help with attachment and care and so on, and just starting to form that relationship. It's also released in high quantities during orgasm, right? Causing feelings of connectedness. So it's a very commonly talked about hormone, oxytocin, and you'll definitely hear about it again. And I'll tell you, this would be a great like matching question on the exam, right? When we get to that first test and you get open notes and open book and everything. So you all should do fantastically. There's no reason you shouldn't. But it might be a great question if I had a list of all the hormones and all of their jobs and you have to match them together, just putting that out there into the world. So you'll definitely see these again. And we'll talk about a lot of them later in the semester. But these hormones, if I back up for just 1 second, as I mentioned, your chromosomes determine your gonads, and then your gonads will release all of these hormones, causing you to further differentiate and create your anatomy. Okay? And then that anatomy plays a role in shaping your gender. Questions, thoughts, comments, anything about this massive list of hormones? There are more, but these are the big ones. No need to add more for now, right? This is plenty. Any thoughts or questions? Yeah. Yeah, it tends to be released more in women because like the mechanism for it is really supposed to help quite a bit with that bonding after childbirth, but it's released in men and women under the same circumstances. But traditionally, and it can happen for men too, right after childbirth, if they're bonding with the baby. But it does tend to, I want to say, a little bit higher in women, but it depends. It's not like universal. So it's a great question. Any other? Thoughts or comments or anything for now? All right. I'm going to erase that. So if we take all of that information together, I want to make one more like little chart up here that may or may not be helpful. So let's make one more summary here. So if we have, how do I want to organize this? Say women, men. But if we kind of summarize everything that we talked about, and then we can get to this. So in terms of like the reproductive cell, so for women, right, the reproductive cell that women possess are eggs, which we sometimes call ova or ovum, which we'll get to later. Men, the reproductive cell is sperm. So I'm kind of summarizing here like what we would traditionally see in someone who's male versus female. And then we can talk about what happens when it doesn't go traditionally. Chromosomes. Right, I just mentioned this. What is traditionally the chromosomal makeup for women? XX, perfect. And men? XY. Okay. Oops, that almost looks like an X. Let's make that very clear, right? X and a half an X. So XX and XY. If we go with the gonads, and here we have the ovaries, and here we have the testes. A couple more layers we could add. Internal or hormones, hormones. So again, these are all kind of building on each other. So hormones traditionally for women are going to be the estrogens. For men, the androgens. And then that's going to dictate the internal structure of anatomy. So internal structures. Maybe a little more. So the internal structures traditionally for women, which we'll talk more about in the next chapter, would be uterus, fallopian tubes, ovaries. Right, those are the traditional like internal structures for someone who's typically female. Right, uterus, fallopian tubes, ovaries, and vagina. Right. An internal structure. Internal structures for men, we could put the seminal vesicles and the vas deferens. And again, we'll talk about these later, but they play a huge role in sperm production and hormonal production. Yeah. So that's considered an external like piece of anatomy, right? And we'll talk about that quite a bit. We'll get to that when we get to the male anatomy. Last one. Then we have the external structures. And again, every single one building, right? So traditionally, someone who is female would have labia, which are like the lips of the vulva. Then we can add the clitoris, the structure, what do they call it? A statue in Greece, but I love that. So those are traditional like female external genitalia. And then for men, we would say the penis and scrotum. So this is what you would traditionally see in someone who's like biologically female, biologically male. Now, this is like 98, 99% of the time. But sometimes people identify as what we would call intersexed. So somebody who's intersexed has a blending of biological attributes of both sexes, not gender. So this isn't somebody who's like a little bit masculine and a little bit feminine. That we would call androgyny. Now we're talking about biology. So this is somebody who maybe has like a combination of female anatomy and male anatomy, or they present in some way that isn't traditional. It's not super common, but it does happen. Things can go awry. It's a very complicated process of biological unfolding during pregnancy, and things can happen. We used to call this being a hermaphrodite, but that is no longer the term. It's kind of an insensitive way of referring to someone in this who has this condition, but it was named after Hermaphrodite, who what was the Greek goddess who possessed both attributes, right? A little bit of male and female anatomy. So the way that we typically refer to someone who doesn't fit neatly would be intersex. And I'm not going to cover these, but I would like you to look at them in the book. They're not super common, so I don't want to spend our time on them. But I believe that they start on page 87, if I remember correctly. So make sure you take a look at these when you're doing your reading, which hopefully everybody is doing. But when you read through chapter 4, there are kind of two main categories of kind of atypical sexual differentiation. There are conditions that relate to kind of abnormal or atypical chromosomes, right? So people have maybe like XXY, or they're missing a Y, right? There's a lot of different conditions that can happen there. And then there are ones that relate more to hormones. And there's a couple of different examples of each in the book. So definitely make sure you take a look at those. I may ask you a question or two about them on the test, so just make sure you read through them. But they're pretty rare, so I don't want to spend too much time there. But definitely there are conditions where people have this atypical presentation occurring. So those are all the biological pieces, right? So again, we said that gender is socially constructed, it's psychological, it's cultural, but all of this does influence your gender. But what we'll talk about from here are some of the more like social learning elements of gender. Because a lot of gender is socially constructed. It's influenced by our society, it's influenced by our culture, and there are a lot of stereotypes that go with this. I love this little picture, right? So the woman's brain, if you can read it, love, talk, babies, respect. Let's say, maybe I can read it over here. Right. So sexuality and shoes, right? For the woman's brain. His says sex, beer, food, TV, sex, football, sex, right? So those are stereotypes. Again, over here, different stereotypes of male versus female. And stereotypes are kind of these blanket shared beliefs. And some people fit stereotypes really well, right? Sometimes you meet somebody and they are like stereotypically masculine or male, and they fit it to a T. And then you meet people who are stereotypically feminine or female. And then there are lots of people who break that entirely, right? I have a close friend, and he looks like the most like strongest masculine guy that you could ever meet. He's a construction dude. He's like really, really strong. And then you start talking to him and he loves little kitties. Like he's a super kind, like gentle guy. And like he doesn't like football. So we're barely friends. No, I'm just kidding. Right. But he's such a like, he looks like the stereotypical strong, tough guy. That's not at all who he is. And I love that about him, right? Because I like to break like stereotypes too. So what I want you to do just for a moment, and then we'll talk about this together. I want you to find a few people. You're not turning this in, but write it down. I want you to find a couple of people, like 3 or 4, whatever you need. And I want you to write down, what are some stereotypes of what it means to be male or masculine? These can be things that people like or do or say, or ways they act or feel, anything. And then some stereotypes of what it means to be female or feminine. Again, the same thing. It can be attributes, preferences, activities, anything, but stereotypes. So these may or may not be true of everyone, but try and get a little bit of a list, and then we can talk about it together. So like 3 or 4 people, jot it down. I'll give you like 5 minutes or so, and then we'll talk about it as a class. Whatever's easy, 3 or 4 people.
Female. Okay, we can go down to that one. That's a really good function for us. What time? That is so awesome. Yeah. Oh yeah.
I used to play tigers. Tigers.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're just like baby.
Some people.
They're like,
Yeah.
I think they
Let's take one more and then we'll talk about it together, like one more minute.
What's your?
yeah, violence. That would be so much. It's genuinely one of my favorite pieces, man. We can just put a singer Brian said. The singer Patrick Bateman. So. Like, you never go.
Our big group and talk about it together. And I'd like you to ask you to remember too that these are stereotypes. So they don't necessarily mean that they're accurate. Sometimes they are, sometimes they're not. But let's start with stereotypes of being like male or masculine. Anyone want to give me like one and we'll keep going around? Yeah. Loving meat. Okay. All right. All right. Like I'm a carnivore. Steak all the time. Yeah. Yeah, really common one, right? Not supposed to have emotion. Yeah.
There's the movie American Psycho.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, right? Such a good movie. Or an interesting movie. So yeah. Okay. So you think of like his character, like Christian Bale's character.
Also the movie.
Okay. Right.
Don't think it's satire and everybody else.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point, right? I agree with that. Yeah. Okay.
Like, basically, like, plays into the
Okay. Okay. So like more of like a leadership.
Yeah, like you would take the commandeering role to be the screw stuff like that.
Okay. Yeah.
They probably the one saying that like your stereotypes as being unhygienic as
Okay.
compared to females.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. My I don't know why that reminded me of father-in-law and my wife, my father, her dad, and her mom all went to get their nails done the other day. And like my father-in-law has diabetes, so he said take really good care of his feet, right? Like of his toes, make sure you get hygiene. And he went in there and I was there with the kids, they all joined, and I got them all jumping straight. I didn't know it, I don't know why. But it was the funniest thing. He went to sit down and the woman was like, you want to do your toes? And he's like, yeah, I don't want to paint them, but I'd like them to be clean. And she's all like, oh, clean, like making fun of him, right? And he's all like, well, yeah, I mean, I'd like to be a clean person. And so it's a stereotype, that like hygiene thing. I don't know, that just reminded me, it was like 2 days ago. And he was getting a hard time because stereotypically, right, like men don't go get pedicures as often as women do. Not always true. Other stuff, what are some other stereotypes? Yeah. Okay, protectors and providers, right? That's like the old hunter-gatherer like dichotomy, right? Other people, what are some other ones? It can be things that they traditionally maybe like or are interested in, or what else? What are some other stereotypes? Men, masculinity, yeah.
It's the word beer.
Beer, that's up there like 3 times, right? Beer, other stuff? Other than sex and football and beer, right? Yeah. Video games, for sure, right? My daughter painfully would disagree violently, right? But yeah. Okay, don't know how to dress, no style whatsoever, right? Yeah. Did you ever get it? Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I think men are typically seen as like more interested in things, and women are seen more interested in like interpersonal connection.
Okay,
And people.
sure, all right, I like it, yeah,
Also, hustle culture is kind of a big thing.
okay,
I guess like that's more modern, I guess, than
Sure.
stereotype, but it's still kind of relevant thing, I guess.
okay, like it, yeah. Fishing in a pictures with the fish, I like it, right? What else? Anything else wrote down that we want to leave out? Yeah. Okay, aggressive, like leading, domineering, unemotional, those are all really common stereotypes. Independence, right? That you don't need anyone. Anything else we want to make sure we include? Yeah.
So like kind of what you're saying about said, fighting
Sure.
physically as compared to females fighting mentally.
Okay, right. I like it. Yeah.
More like sexually driven.
Yeah, right. And it's like there like 15 times, right? Sex, right? Sex, football, food, beer, TV. Sums it up. Right. How about for women? What are some things? Well, let's go on the other side here. Yeah.
I think big stereotype for women is that
women are always in distress.
Okay. Always in distress. Sure. Yeah. Bad driving, right? I love it. They're like parking. I don't know if you can see the tiny dot at the top. That's parking skill, right? Apparently. Yeah. Not being funny. Okay. Yeah. Always gossiping. And I heard you talking about that men are just as bad at gossiping, right? Maybe in a different way. Yeah. Sensitive, for sure. Emotional. I'm sure a lot of you maybe thought of that one. Yeah. Submissive, right? That they're on the opposite side of kind of masculinity here. Yeah.
That prioritize vanity.
Prioritize vanity. Okay. Other stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, like caretakers and charge of children.
Yeah. Caretakers in charge of the house, in charge of kids, right? Yeah.
Another stereotype is that women can't work as hard as men.
They can't work as hard as men. Is that what you said? Yeah. Okay. Okay. Great. Yeah. Okay. How do you mean? Like, give me a little more. Oh, okay. Yes, they are, right? And a word for that, if you want to sound really intelligent, it's called heteronormativity. It sounds like you're really smart if you say that, right? Like the idea that people who follow these prescriptive roles are heterosexual. And so we're normalizing gender as it relates to orientation. Heteronormativity, it's your big word of the day, right? Anything else we can add for femininity? Women? Yeah.
Kind of more physically affectionate than men.
Okay. All right. Anything else? Yeah.
Like less intelligent.
Less intelligent.
Leadership roles.
Yeah, right. The opposite of the leadership role. Yeah.
For men, it's like being a cool player, but for women, it's being like a spot.
Yeah, different terms for men and women for the same behaviors, right? Which is interesting. Now, we're having kind of an interesting conversation up here, and it just made me wonder out of curiosity, how many of you think that these are a little bit outdated by show of hands? Like maybe they don't hold up quite as well anymore. A lot of you, I don't know, any thoughts on that? I mean, these are classic stereotypes, right? These are stereotypes that have been around forever. But our culture and our world and the ideas of gender have definitely changed a lot over time. If you go back to like the 1950s and 60s, women weren't allowed to wear pants, right? Like a lot of people wearing pants today. I mean, myself included, though sadly it's gonna be quite warm. I'm complaining about the heat again. It's all I can think about. But our ideas have changed a lot. I mean, any thoughts on that? A lot of you said they're kind of outdated. Yeah. Okay, from your research that you did, well, I like the connection there. Now I get back to our sex research. Yeah, I mean, these do fit people, right? Like these stereotypes come from somewhere. Stereotypes are often driven by reality, but then they can be problematic when you treat people like a stereotype, right? So there's nothing wrong with having a stereotype, but when you treat all men the same way because you assume that that's how they are, that's where it gets problematic. Or treat all women the same way because you assume, oh, well, you're female, so you must like shopping, don't say that, right? But shopping or cooking or cleaning or love or babies or whatever. But when you treat people that way, that's where we get ourselves into trouble. Did you have a thought?
I think the stereotypes have evolved recently, where it's like there's this weird thought of like, oh, women or men used to be like this and now we've shifted in this direction. So there's a whole new set of stereotypes that are like in conjunction with old stereotypes, like, oh, women used to save themselves for marriage, but now they're loose or thoughts or whatever.
Mhm.
Or men used to be manly and now they cross their legs or
Yeah.
are gay or bisexual or something like that.
Or metrosexual or something? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's interesting how we have it's not necessarily that we've broken them as much as we've created new ones, right? Like they've kind of shifted a little bit. You had your hand up. Did you have a?
Women like not being strong as men and all that. I think, like personally, I think women are way stronger than men. They go through a lot more. Like you see a mom at the grocery store, that's just mom. And some people will see a dad doing that with their kid and it'll be like, oh, that's a dad that's involved.
Mhm.
And it's like, but it's not, it's the same thing, but
Yeah.
you're seeing it different because a woman always has to play that role. And
Yeah.
it's not fair, 'cause at the end of the day, it's like women, I feel like personally, women go through a lot more than what men do.
I think you just got some points across the room right now because I saw a lot of people nodding like, uh-huh. And I love that you brought that up, right? Like the same behavior between like someone who's like a dad versus a mom. viewed so differently, right? Like, oh my God, he's such a good dad because he's with his kids, right? Like versus like, oh yeah, she's a mom because she's with her kids, right? That same behavior viewed incredibly differently because there's different standards and expectations for the two. I love that you brought that up. Any other like thoughts or comments or anything related to this, of this idea of like stereotypes? They're definitely around, right? The first thing that we want to know when a baby is born is it a boy or a girl? It's the first question. Not are they healthy? Is everyone okay? Is it alive? Right? Did you have more than one? Right? I don't know. Right? Like it's the first question right after that. Did you have a boy or a girl? Right? Because from the moment of birth, we shape gender, right? And we react differently to little boys and little girls. We have different words for little boys and little girls performing the same behaviors, right? Like a baby, a newborn baby, 2 months old. Oh, he's so strong. Oh, she's so cute and delicate. They're sleeping. They didn't do anything, right? It's just different descriptors for the same thing because they're male or female. It's something that's so ingrained in culture. Yeah. Yes.
Wild things on it, like.
Yeah.
Like Daddy's Little Princess, and then we showed little boys one is like future CEO and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Even the clothing.
Yeah.
Right. So I'll tell you I have 3 girls and I'm in like girl land in the house, honestly, all the time. But my oldest was born with like beautiful, like thick hair and it all fell out. Like within like 3 weeks, she was bald all the way till she was 2. So no like hair or context for her, like just a baby with no hair, right? She was born with black hair and blue eyes, and now she has brown hair or brown eyes and blonde hair. I don't know what happened. Completely changed. But she was bald. And so the clothes that we put her in were people's like social cue. And it was so interesting to me as a psychologist. I had so much fun with this, right? I'd put her in pink and everyone would be like, oh, what a beautiful little girl you have. Put her in blue. What a handsome little guy you had. Like, because there was no other context other than her clothing, right? I'd put her in like cream or like brown and people didn't know what to say. Oh, okay. What, you know, like you can hear them stammering like, boy, little girl, I don't know what to say, right? Like, because I have no clues. It's really interesting, the clothing, right? The second we told people we were having like a girl, it was like the pink flooded in, you know? And my daughter, for her first birthday, she loved Mickey Mouse. She called him Mickey the Mouse at the time, right? Mickey Mouse, not Minnie Mouse, who was Min Mao. Oh, so cute. Like, she gets annoyed now when I say, like, you used to love Min Mao, right? Like, she's like, I'm 10, stop it. She's 10 going to 17. But when she was a baby, for her first birthday, we threw a Mickey Mouse clubhouse party. And the invitations were Mickey. Everything was Mickey. She did not like Minnie Mouse, which I was so happy with. Minnie Mouse was right? In my opinion. So for her party, everyone showed up. And you know what her gifts were? All Minnie Mouse. Not one person got her Mickey Mouse stuff because Mickey was for boys, right? All of her friends got her Minnie Mouse stuff. And as a product, she ended up liking Minnie Mouse, right? I was like, damn it, all right, screw you all, you got her Minnie Mouse stuff, right? Minnie Mouse stuff everywhere. Like it wasn't okay for her at one to like Mickey because Mickey was the boy thing to do, right? It's so interesting. These gender role injunctions or prescriptions are very, very prevalent. And I have a really cool kind of like montage of videos that I put together, but it's more than 11 minutes. So I think what I'll do is I'll stop here. And when we pick up on Wednesday, because I won't see you Monday, it's a long weekend. When we pick up on Wednesday, we'll talk a little bit about like the role of the media and like other things, a few other things related to this. And then I have this little compilation. It includes like a what would you do thing that's related to Halloween costumes, which is kind of fun as we're getting closer to Halloween. The spirit store is almost open in CD. I drive by it every day, like, are you open yet? No. I know. I'm like, I've already been to the one without doors. Right, so I know that one's open. Getting closer. So we'll pick up there on Wednesday. Have a wonderful, like, really long weekend.
I just had a question about the rules. Are they beneficial at all, or are they typically something that should be unlearned?
I mean, there's no harm to them in a way. Like, there's nothing wrong with like if a little girl wants to learn to do things that are traditionally female. There's nothing wrong with that. And I think they can be helpful. They kind of have a guiding principle. But where they get in, people get into problems is when, like, well, you don't like things that are traditionally female, and so now it's problematic, right? Or you don't fit in, or you're not like normal. Yeah,
I think it could be really helpful in
Yeah.
medical sense, like a woman will come in with a problem with the chest and they'll be like, 2 period, but it could be like an actual heart attack.
yeah, right. They can be. There's a lot of stereotypes that can be harmful. They can be a little bit helpful, but they can also have some very detrimental things too. All right, we'll talk more about it. Oh, I'm sorry. Like I'm putting you on. If you have questions, we have time. Yes. What?
No, you.
I will have to make it out there. I've already made one trip to the spirit school, so I'm going to drive for Halloween decorations. Lowe's has all their stuff out, right? I'm like, I'm ready. I'm ready. I'm gonna make like a big Halloween archway from my house this year. I'm like gonna go way over the top. Yeah.
Nutcrackers.
What? Christmas Halloween? Right.
Out.
Okay. I know. We do a huge, like, this is so like side stuff, right? But we do a huge like spooky town village every year. Like I have a lot. I've already bought my like 4 Michael's houses for this year. Right? Yeah. Yes, we have one. Mhm. Yes, I have thought about it and executed it. Yes, we have a tree that we keep up all year, and then we rotate the things on it, like for based on the holiday. My youngest is really into Easter, and she's like, "There's not a tree for Easter." I was like, "Well, we can make one. Like, I can do that, right?" So we made an Easter tree and Halloween tree. Fun things. All right, you may leave. We can keep talking about Halloween and then football. Or have a wonderful weekend. I'll see you all on Wednesday. You too. Thanks. Bye.